Senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, I realize to speak. Before I do, I have to take a minute.
Quorum calls in effect.
I ask the quorum call be rescinded.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I speak on the issue I meant to speak for, I've got to spend a minute and talk about Paul Kirk and Gail Kirk and how much they've given to this country for many, many years. And what a great honor it has been for me to serve in the United States Senate with Paul. He embodies all that's good about this country. He is someone who has incredible intellect, judgment, and he's a lot of fun to be around. I just want to tell you, whatever you do, Paul, Gail, we all send you our best. Paul's been maybe not a long-term senator, but a great senator. And thank you. Mr. President, on Tuesday night, the Senate spoke with one voice, expressing serious concern about ongoing attempts by China and other countries to restrict press and internet freedom, and condemning the recent cyber attacks against Google in China. In a bipartisan effort, a truly bipartisan effort, we unanimously passed SRES 405, introduced by myself and Senators Brownback, Casey, Kyle, Feingold, Lieberman, McCain, Specter, and Webb. A broad spectrum of the United States Senate who all agree on this issue. This resolution reaffirms the centrality of freedom of expression and the press as cornerstones of U.S. foreign policy. It frames such freedoms as part of U.S. efforts to promote individual rights and voices concern over the ongoing efforts by many countries, and I mean many countries, to restrict free expression, highlighting the attempts to censor, restrict, and monitor access to the internet. The impetus for this resolution was a recent cyber attack on Google's corporate infrastructure and at least 34 companies, reportedly originating in China. Google has evidence to suggest that a primary goal of this attack was to access Gmail accounts of Chinese human rights activists, journalists, and dissidents. Even worse, this attack was only one of many recent attempts to exploit security flaws and illegally access computer networks of numerous individuals and institutions. These cyber attacks are unconscionable violations of national security interests, in addition to violations of intellectual property rights. With the passage of this resolution, countries from which such attacks originate, or countries which take steps to restrict or monitor the internet, should consider themselves on notice. The resolution calls on Chinese government to conduct a thorough review of the recent attacks and to make this investigation and its results transparent. This is not just about cyber warfare, and it's not just about China. This resolution highlights a much broader and far-reaching problem of state-sponsored efforts to restrict free and unfettered access to the internet. As technology continues to develop, an increasing number of governments have employed repressive tactics to monitor and control the internet. In countries such as Iran and China, a growing effort has been made to silence the voices of their citizens and restrict the free flow of information. According to the 2009 Freedom on the Net report conducted by Freedom House, the government of China employs a sophisticated, multi-layered, and wide-ranging apparatus to curtail internet freedom. It also employs legal and economic means to coerce internet service providers, web hosting firms, and mobile phone companies to delete and censor online content. Finally, it requires domestic Chinese and foreign companies with subsidiaries in China, such as Google, but many others, to adjust their business practices to allow for increased filtering and supervision by the government of China, which limits the data available on search engines. This resolution urges companies to engage in responsible business practices in the face of such pressure from foreign governments by refusing to aid in the curtailment of free expression, and welcomes the diplomatic initiative announced by Secretary Clinton in her January 21st speech on internet freedom to support the development of technology aimed at censorship circumvention. Finally, The resolution highlights violations of a free press in China, such as ongoing jamming of Radio Free Asia, Voice America, and other international broadcasters, despite the unimpeded broadcast to the United States of Chinese-run media outlets. We allow China to broadcast with their CCTV and the China Radio International in the United States completely unfettered, yet they jam all of our broadcasts by Voice America and Radio Free Asia in their country. This is not fair, and this is not reciprocity, and it's not becoming a nation that hopes to be one of the great nations of the world. It pays tribute to the professional and citizen journalists who persevere in their dedication to report in China, despite the extremely high rate of imprisonment among journalists. The freedoms highlighted in this resolution are not just an inherent good, they're also a practical benefit. As Secretary Clinton recently said, and I quote, "Countries that restrict free access to information or violate the basic rights of internet users risk walling themselves off from progress," unquote. Mr. President, I am grateful for the widespread support and passage of SRES 405, and I thank the other co-sponsors for their leadership. The United States must not sit back as voices in China, Iran, and around the world are silenced. It is my hope that this resolution will help to promote an environment of expanded freedoms, especially when it comes to internet and the press. I ask unanimous consent the text of the resolution be included in the record along with my statement.
Without objection.
I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.